The massive space station hung in the darkness like a shining wheel. Novin Station was the busiest place in this part of the galaxy. Ships from 20 different alien worlds came and went every hour. Humans had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago, but they were eager to prove themselves. Judge Ju-Ray Kim looked out the window of her transport ship as it approached the station. Her dark eyes took in the spinning metal structure with its thousands of lights. After 15 years as one of Earth's top judges, this was her biggest job yet. The United Nations Space Council had chosen her to represent humanity on the Galactic Judiciary Committee. 10 minutes until docking. Judge Kim, the pilot, called over the speaker. Station control has assigned us to Bay 47. Ju-Ray straightened her formal black robes and checked her reflection in the small mirror on the wall. At 42, her face showed the seriousness of someone who had spent their life studying law. Her short black hair was neatly combed, and she wore only the simple silver pin that marked her as an Earth judiciary official. This is just another courtroom, she told herself. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. She would be the first human to sit on the committee, a position that would let her help shape the laws that governed 100 alien species. The ship shuddered slightly as it entered the docking bay. Through the window, Ju-Ray could see all kinds of aliens moving about. Tall, willowy beings with 4 arms, short, stocky creatures covered in fur, and even floating jellyfish-like entities that glowed with inner light. Her communication device beeped. It was a message from Ambassador Lee, the head of Earth's embassy on the station. Judge Kim, welcome to Novin Station. I regret I cannot meet you personally at the dock. An urgent matter has come up with the Proxima delegation. My assistant will escort you to your quarters. Your official introduction to the committee is scheduled for tomorrow at 900 station time. Ju-Ray sent a quick acknowledgement and gathered her things. She had studied all the major alien cultures and their legal systems for months. Humans might be newcomers to the galactic stage, but she was determined to show they belonged. The ship's door hissed open, and Ju-Ray stepped onto the metal deck of Novin Station for the first time. The air smelled different, cleaner than Earth's, but with an odd metallic tang. The gravity felt slightly lighter, making her movements feel bouncy and strange. She expected to see the ambassador's assistant, but instead, she was met by a tall, blue-scaled reptilian being in a black and silver uniform. His yellow eyes narrowed as he saw her. This was a Silurian, one of the oldest species in the galactic community. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still figuring out farming. Transport SC-117 from Earth Station. Prepare for inspection, the Silurian officer said. His voice was cold and formal. The translator chip in Ju-Ray's ear converted his clicks and hisses into English. Officer, I am Judge Ju-Ray Kim, Earth's representative to the Galactic Judiciary Committee, she said clearly. I have diplomatic clearance. The Silurian's eye ridges rose slightly. I am Security Officer Taiwan Park. All new arrivals are subject to inspection, regardless of claim status. The way he said claimed made it clear he doubted her. Officer Park turned to the human pilot who had followed Ju-Ray out of the ship. Return to your vessel. This inspection may take some time. The pilot looked uncertainly at Ju-Ray, who nodded. It's fine. Standard procedure, I'm sure. As the pilot disappeared back into the ship, Officer Park moved closer to Ju-Ray. He was nearly 2 heads taller than her, and his uniform bore numerous badges and insignia that she didn't recognize. Your identification and travel documents, he demanded, holding out a scaled hand with sharp claws. Ju-Ray reached into her bag and pulled out her diplomatic credentials, a small metallic card encoded with all her information and official status. As you can see, I have level 1 diplomatic clearance. The Earth Embassy is expecting me. Officer Park took the card and ran it through a scanner on his wrist. He frowned at the results. Is there a problem? Ju-Ray asked. These credentials appear irregular, Park said. His yellow eyes studied her face with obvious suspicion. The Black Protocol designation is unusually high for a human. Jury understood immediately. The binary logical assessment of cognitive knowledge, black, was the standard test all species took to measure their legal and logical reasoning abilities. Humans had surprised everyone by scoring extremely well on it. Some older species, especially Silurians, hadn't taken this well. My black protocol rating was verified by 3 independent examiners, Jury said calmly. If you check with the Judiciary Committee, they can confirm my appointment. That won't be necessary, Park said. We have procedures for irregularities like this. He tapped his communication device. This is Officer Park. I need a secondary verification team at Bay 47. Possible credential fraud. Fraud. Jury's voice remained steady, but she felt a flash of anger. Officer Park, I suggest you contact Ambassador Lee or the committee directly before making accusations. Park's scales rippled slightly. A Silurian expression of dismissal. Humans always think they deserve special treatment. Your species has barely left your home system, yet you expect to sit on the committee. The galaxy doesn't work that way. 2 more Silurian officers arrived, both carrying what looked like weapons. Park spoke to them in their native language, too quick for Jury's translator to catch. Open your bags for inspection, one of the new officers demanded. Jury considered refusing, but knew that would only make things worse. She handed over her travel bag, watching carefully as they searched through her belongings. What's this? Park held up a small wooden box. A gift for the committee chairperson, Jury explained. It's a traditional Korean puzzle box from Earth. Park opened the box roughly, breaking one of the delicate wooden panels. Inside was a small jade figurine of a turtle, a symbol of wisdom and long life in Korean culture. Contraband scan, Park ordered, and one of the other officers ran a red light over the figurine. It's clean, the officer reported. Just a carved stone. Park looked disappointed. He dropped the figurine back into the broken box and continued searching. After 30 minutes of increasingly invasive searching, Park seemed frustrated at finding nothing suspicious. Your credentials require additional verification, he finally declared. You will come with me to the security office. I have diplomatic immunity, Jury reminded him. And I am expected at the Earth Embassy. Diplomatic immunity depends on valid credentials, Park snapped. And yours are questionable. Humans have tried to forge documents before. This was a lie, and Jury knew it. No human had ever been caught forging documents on Novan Station. But she also knew that arguing further would be pointless. Officer Park had clearly decided to make trouble for her. I will cooperate, she said, but I formally request that you notify the Earth Embassy of this detention. When processing is complete, Park replied, not meeting her eyes. As they left the docking bay, Jury noticed other aliens watching the scene with interest. A human in judiciary robes being escorted by 3 Silurian security officers was not a common sight. They entered a transport tube that whisked them through the station. Through the clear walls, Jury could see the incredible diversity of Novan Station. Markets filled with goods from 100 worlds, aliens of all shapes and sizes going about their business, and the massive central hub where representatives from all major species met to govern galactic affairs. That was where she was supposed to be, not being treated like a criminal by a prejudiced officer. The tube stopped at a heavily secured area marked Station Security in 12 different languages. Officer Park guided her through several checkpoints, each time presenting her irregular credentials to other Silurians who looked at her with the same suspicion. Finally, they arrived at a small plain room with only a metal table and 2 chairs. Wait here, Park ordered. Your credentials will be processed, and then we will discuss the penalties for document forgery. The door closed behind him with a heavy click. Jury sat alone in the room, her mind racing through galactic laws and regulations. She was not worried. She knew her rights and her position. But she was angry. This kind of treatment was exactly why humans needed representation on the Judiciary Committee. Officer Park thought he was teaching a human her place. He had no idea who he was really dealing with. Tomorrow was supposed to be her introduction to the committee. Instead, it seemed she would be giving Officer Taiwan Park a much-needed lesson in galactic law. Juri sat alone in the small detention room for over an hour. The walls were a dull gray metal, and the lights buzzed faintly overhead. She had tried the door once, finding it locked as expected. There were no windows, only a small camera in the corner that blinked with a red light. Rather than giving in to frustration, she used the time to mentally review the relevant sections of the Galactic Code of Conduct, particularly Article 47, which covered the rights of diplomatic representatives. By her count, Officer Park had already violated at least 6 provisions. The door finally slid open with a hiss. Officer Park entered, followed by another Silurian wearing the insignia of a senior security official. Park's scales seemed to gleam with satisfaction. "This is Chief Officer Hanjun," Park announced. "He oversees all security matters in this sector of the station." Chief Hanjun's scales were darker blue than Park's, with gray patches that suggested greater age. His yellow eyes studied Juri with more curiosity than hostility. "I understand there is a question about your credentials, Earth representative," the chief said. His translator rendered his speech in more formal tones than Park's. "There is no question about my credentials," Juri replied calmly. "They are completely legitimate and can be verified by the Earth Embassy or the Judiciary Committee." Chief Hanjun turned to Park. "Have you contacted either authority?" Park's scales rippled in what Juri had learned was a sign of discomfort. "I deemed it unnecessary until we completed our investigation." The chief's eye ridges rose. "Standard procedure is to verify diplomatic credentials with the issuing authorities." "With respect, Chief," Park said quickly, "humans have been known to claim diplomatic status to avoid standard security processes. I have encountered this before." This was another lie, and Juri had had enough. "Officer Park," she said, rising from her chair, "I formally request that you provide specific instances of humans falsely claiming diplomatic status on this station. If you cannot, your statement constitutes defamation of my species, which violates Article 12 of the Galactic Non-Discrimination Accord." The room fell silent. Chief Hanjun's eyes narrowed as he looked at Park. "I have not personally documented such cases," Park admitted reluctantly, "but the possibility exists." "Possibility is not evidence," Juri said. "Now, I demand that you contact Ambassador Lee of the Earth Embassy immediately, as is my right under Article 47 of the Galactic Code." Chief Hanjun seemed impressed by her knowledge of galactic law. "That would be appropriate. Officer Park, establish communication with the Earth Embassy now." Park hesitated. "Chief, I have reason to believe this human's Black Protocol rating has been falsified. No human has ever scored above 85, yet her credentials claim a rating of 97. Juri maintained her calm expression, though inside she felt a flare of anger. This was the real issue. Park simply couldn't accept that a human could score so highly. "My Black Protocol rating of 97 was verified by 3 independent examiners," she stated. "It is the highest score ever achieved by a human, which is precisely why I was selected for the Judiciary Committee." Chief Hanjun's scales shifted in what might have been surprise. "The Judiciary Committee. You claim to be a committee appointee." "I do not claim. I am. My formal introduction is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 900 station time." The chief turned to Park with a new intensity. "You detained a Judiciary Committee appointee without verifying her status with the committee." Park's scales paled slightly. The credentials appeared irregular. "I was following protocol for suspected forgery." "Contact the committee immediately," the chief ordered. "That won't be necessary," said a new voice from the doorway. All 3 turned to see a tall, thin alien with pale green skin and large black eyes. He wore the formal silver robes of the Judiciary Committee staff. "I am Zelnar, assistant to Chairperson Vox of the Galactic Judiciary Committee," the newcomer said. "We became concerned when Judge Kim failed to arrive at her scheduled welcome meeting." Chief Hanjun bowed slightly to the committee representative. We apologize for any confusion. Officer Park was conducting a routine security check. Zellner's large eyes fixed on Park. A routine check that has lasted 3 hours and resulted in a committee appointee being held in a detention room. Park's scales were now a very pale blue. There were irregularities in her credentials. Her black protocol rating is the highest achieved by any human to date, Zellner finished for him. Which is precisely why the committee selected her. Judge Kim's legal mind is exceptional, even by galactic standards. Juri maintained her professional demeanor, but she couldn't help feeling a small sense of satisfaction at Park's discomfort. Zellner turned to her. Judge Kim, on behalf of the committee, I apologize for this unfortunate welcome to Novan Station. If you're ready, I can escort you to your quarters now. Thank you, Juri said, standing. I would appreciate that. As she gathered her belongings, Officer Park stepped forward. This matter is not concluded, he insisted. I still need to verify. Officer Park, Chief Hanjun interrupted sharply. That will be all. Return to your regular duties. Park looked as if he wanted to object, but instead, he stiffly bowed and left the room, his posture rigid with anger. Chief Hanjun turned to Juri. Judge Kim, I offer my personal apologies for this treatment. Not all Silurians share Officer Park's perspectives. Juri nodded in acknowledgement. I understand, Chief. Individuals do not represent entire species. As Zellner led her from the detention area, Juri noticed other security personnel watching them. Some looked curious, others embarrassed, and a few seemed openly hostile. News traveled fast on the station. They entered a transport tube different from the one she had arrived in. This one was marked with the golden symbol of the Judiciary Committee, a balanced scale surrounded by stars. This tube connects directly to the committee's private section, Zellner explained. As a full committee member, you'll have access to all secure areas. As they glided through the station, Zellner spoke again. I should inform you that Officer Park has filed a formal complaint about your black protocol rating. He is demanding a retest. Juri was not surprised. He is within his rights to file a complaint, and I am within mine to accept a retest, which I will do gladly. Zellner's face showed what might have been a smile. Chairperson Vox predicted you would say exactly that. The committee has already approved a special session for your retest tomorrow, before your formal introduction. Will Officer Park be present? Juri asked. He has requested to observe, yes. Is that a problem? Juri shook her head. Not at all. In fact, I think it's important that he attend. The transport tube slowed and stopped at a beautifully designed station. Unlike the utilitarian areas Juri had seen so far, this part of Novan was elegant, with living plants growing along curved walls and soft, natural lighting. The Judiciary Residential Complex, Zellner explained, leading her through wide corridors. Your quarters have been adapted for human comfort. They stopped at a door marked with both Earth's symbol and her name in several languages. Judge Kim, Zellner said formally, despite today's unfortunate beginning, the committee is honored to welcome you. Your appointment is historic, the first human to serve as a full committee member. Thank you, Zellner. I hope to serve with distinction. One more thing, the alien added. Officer Park's behavior today, it is not isolated. Some of the older species have difficulty accepting humans as equals. Your presence on the committee will challenge many deeply held beliefs. Juri nodded. I understand. Change is rarely comfortable. Rest well, Judge. Tomorrow will be significant. After Zellner left, Juri entered her new quarters. The room was spacious and thoughtfully designed with Earth-like furniture and lighting. Large windows offered a spectacular view of space, with distant stars shining like diamonds on black velvet. She found her luggage had already been delivered. Opening her communication device, she saw several urgent messages from Ambassador Lee, who had just learned of her detention. Juri sent a brief reply. All is well. Matter resolved. Preparing for Black Protocol retest tomorrow. She walked to the window and looked out at the vast expanse of stars. Tomorrow, Officer Park would learn that humans weren't just capable of understanding galactic law. They could master it. The Black Protocol retest would be her opportunity to prove not just her own abilities, but humanity's rightful place among the stars. And if Officer Park thought he had been embarrassed today, he had no idea what was coming tomorrow. With a small smile, Judge Joo-ri Kim began to prepare. The next morning, Joo-ri woke early. She had slept well despite the events of the previous day. Her quarters were comfortable, with a bed adjusted to Earth gravity and air that smelled faintly of pine forests. She dressed carefully in her formal judiciary robes. The black fabric was specially designed for her appointment, featuring subtle embroidery of Earth's continents around the collar. On her chest, she pinned the silver badge of the United Nations Space Council, alongside the new golden pin of the Galactic Judiciary Committee that Zelmer had delivered to her quarters last night. At precisely 800 station time, her door chimed. It was Zelmer, come to escort her to the Black Protocol testing chamber. "Good morning, Judge Kim," the green-skinned alien greeted her. "I trust you rested well." "Very well, thank you," she replied. "Is there a large audience expected for this morning's test?" Zellner's large eyes blinked slowly. "Word has spread quickly. The observation gallery is already full. Many are curious to see a human score so highly on the test." As they walked through the corridors, Joo-ri noticed other aliens watching her with interest. Some nodded respectfully, while others whispered to their companions as she passed. "Officer Park has been quite vocal about his doubts," Zellner continued. "He has suggested that your previous test results were somehow manipulated." Joo-ri wasn't surprised. And the committee's response? Chairperson Vox merely stated that today's results would speak for themselves. They entered a large circular chamber. In the center stood a single chair facing a curved wall of shifting colors and patterns. Above and around the testing area was a ring of seats filled with aliens of all kinds. Joo-ri spotted several humans from the Earth Embassy, including Ambassador Lee, who gave her an encouraging nod. And there was Officer Park, sitting stiffly in the front row, his blue scales gleaming under the bright lights. Beside him sat Chief Han-jun and several other Silurian officials. At the highest point of the observation ring sat an imposing figure that Joo-ri recognized from her briefings as Chairperson Vox of the Judiciary Committee. The chairperson was a Moldovan, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Their silver, metallic skin reflected the light, and their four eyes, too large and too small, seemed to take in everything at once. Judge Joo-ri Kim, Chairperson Vox's voice resonated through the chamber without seeming to use any amplification system. "The committee welcomes you. Are you prepared to undertake the Black Protocol assessment?" Joo-ri bowed respectfully. "I am prepared, Chairperson." "Very well. For transparency, given the unusual circumstances, I will explain the process for all present." Vox gestured to the chair in the center. "The binary logical assessment of cognitive knowledge, or Black Protocol, measures legal reasoning, logical analysis, ethical judgment, and cross-cultural understanding. It is the standard by which all judiciary officials in galactic society are evaluated." Vox's lower eyes seemed to focus on Officer Park as they continued. "The test is impossible to manipulate or cheat. It directly interfaces with the subject's thought patterns and decision-making processes." Joo-ri took her place in the central chair. As she sat down, thin metal bands emerged from the armrests and gently wrapped around her wrists. A delicate crown of sensors lowered from above and settled on her head. "The test will present you with 200 legal and ethical scenarios of increasing complexity," Vox explained. "You must resolve each one according to galactic law and universal principles of justice. The average time for completion is 3 hours. The average score across all species is 76. The highest score ever recorded was 99, by Judge Lanner of the Vortian High Council, 300 years ago." Joo-ri saw Officer Park lean forward, his yellow eyes fixed on her with obvious skepticism. "Begin when ready," Vox instructed. Jury took a deep breath and nodded. The wall before her came alive with swirling colors that soon formed into clear images and text. The first scenario appeared, a relatively simple case involving trade disputes between two minor species. She analyzed the facts, considered the applicable laws, and provided her judgment. The system registered her response, and the next scenario appeared. Each one grew more complex, involving more species, more conflicting laws, and more difficult ethical considerations. 2 hours passed. In the observation ring, many spectators had expected to see the human struggle as the scenarios became more challenging. Instead, they watched in amazement as jury worked through each problem with calm efficiency, sometimes taking only seconds to render judgment on cases that would stump most legal experts. Officer Park's scales had darkened to a deep blue, a sign of intense emotion among Silurians. He whispered urgently to Chief Hanjun, who simply watched the proceedings with growing interest. After exactly 2 hours and 47 minutes, the final scenario disappeared from the wall. The censor crown lifted from Jury's head, and the bands released her wrists. The chamber fell completely silent as everyone waited for the results. Chairperson Vox stood. "The Black Protocol assessment is complete. The results are verified and recorded." A large display appeared in the air above the testing chair. It showed a single number, 98. A murmur swept through the audience. Not only had Jury matched her previous score, she had exceeded it. 98 was the second highest score in the history of the Black Protocol. "Judge Ju-Rik Kim," Vox announced formally, "you have demonstrated exceptional legal reasoning and judgment. Your score of 98 confirms your appointment to the Galactic Judiciary Committee as Earth's representative." Ambassador Lee and the other humans broke into applause, soon joined by many of the aliens present. Even some Silurians joined in, though Officer Park remained rigidly in his seat, his scales now almost purple with what Jurai recognized as the Silurian equivalent of anger and embarrassment. Chairperson Vox raised a hand for silence. As is tradition for all new committee members, Judge Kim will now preside over her first official case. Vox's 4 eyes seemed to glitter with something like amusement. By coincidence, the first case on today's docket involves a complaint of improper detention and species-based discrimination filed by the committee itself against a security officer of Novan Station. Officer Park's head snapped up in shock. "Officer Taiwan Park," Vox continued, "you are called to answer for your actions regarding the detention of Judge Kim upon her arrival yesterday. This case will determine whether your actions constituted a violation of the Non-Discrimination Accord and the Diplomatic Immunity Statutes." Park rose to his feet. "Chairperson, this is irregular. How can Judge Kim preside over a case involving herself? That violates the basic principle of impartiality." "You misunderstand, Officer Park," Vox replied calmly. "Judge Kim is not the complainant. The Judiciary Committee itself has filed the complaint, as is our right when one of our members is mistreated, and as for who will preside." Vox turned to Jury. "Judge Kim, as the newest member of the committee with the highest Black Protocol rating currently serving, you are entitled to select any qualified judge to hear this case. Who do you choose?" The chamber fell silent again as all eyes turned to Jury. This was her moment of power. She could select a judge known to be harsh on discrimination cases. She could choose a human judge who would naturally sympathize with her. The choice was entirely hers. Jury stood tall in her judiciary robes. "I select Chief Officer Hanjun to preside over this case." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Park looked stunned. Hanjun, equally surprised, rose from his seat. "May I ask why, Judge Kim?" Chairperson Vox inquired. All 4 eyes focused intently on her. 3 reasons, Jury answered clearly. First, as a Silurian, Chief Hanjun understands the cultural context of Officer Park's actions. Second, as Park's superior, he has the authority to implement any necessary reforms to prevent similar incidents. And third, She looked directly at Officer Park. "I believe in the fairness of the galactic justice system, regardless of species. I am willing to trust my case to a Silurian judge, just as others must trust their cases to me." A moment of silence followed. Then Chairperson Vox nodded slowly. "Well reasoned, Judge Kim. Chief Hanjun, do you accept this responsibility?" The Silurian chief bowed deeply. "I am honored by Judge Kim's trust. I accept." As Chief Hanjun moved to take the central position and Officer Park was escorted to the respondent's area, Ju-ri took her place in the Judiciary Committee's special seating area. She had made her point without saying it directly. True justice was not about revenge or advantage, but about fairness and truth. The hearing was about to begin, and regardless of the outcome, humanity had just shown the galaxy what they stood for. The hearing chamber had changed. Chief Hanjun now sat in the central judge's position. Officer Park stood at a small podium to the left, his scales still dark with emotion. To the right, a tall green alien in formal robes represented the Judiciary Committee. Ju-ri sat with the other committee members, watching carefully. Her face remained calm, but her mind was racing, analyzing every detail of the proceedings. This case was about more than one officer's actions. It was about humanity's place in the galactic community. Chief Hanjun spoke in a clear, formal voice. "This hearing will address the complaint filed by the Galactic Judiciary Committee against Officer Taiwan Park of Silurian Security Services. The complaint alleges violations of the Non-Discrimination Accord, the Diplomatic Immunity Statutes, and the Proper Detention Procedures Act." The chief turned to the committee's representative. "You may present your case." The green alien bowed slightly. "Thank you, Chief Hanjun. I am Prosecutor Zin, representing the Judiciary Committee. Yesterday, Officer Park detained Judge Ju-ri Kim upon her arrival at Novan Station. Despite her presenting valid diplomatic credentials and identification as an appointed member of the Judiciary Committee, Officer Park held her for over 3 hours, subjected her to unnecessary searches, and failed to notify either the Earth Embassy or the committee of her detention. Prosecutor Zin displayed a series of records on the large screen visible to all. Station logs show that Officer Park scanned Judge Kim's credentials and received confirmation of their validity within 2 minutes of their interaction. Yet he proceeded with detention anyway. The prosecutor turned to look directly at Officer Park. "We contend that Officer Park's actions were motivated by species-based prejudice against humans, specifically his disbelief that a human could achieve a high Black Protocol rating. His subsequent demand for a retest confirms this bias." Chief Hanjun nodded. "Officer Park, you may respond to these charges." Park stepped forward, his posture rigid. "I was performing my duty to ensure station security." The human, Judge Kim's, credentials showed an unusually high Black Protocol rating that raised legitimate security concerns. Verification was necessary. "And why did you not contact the Earth Embassy or the Committee for Verification?" Chief Hanjun asked. "Standard procedure is to complete initial investigation before external notification," Park replied. Prosecutor Zin immediately responded. "That is incorrect. Section 14 of the Detention Procedures Act clearly states that diplomatic representatives must have their embassies notified within 10 minutes of any detention, regardless of the reason." Park's scales rippled. "I interpreted the regulations differently in this case." Chief Hanjun leaned forward. "Officer Park, in your 15 years of service, have you ever detained a diplomatic representative of any other species for credential verification?" A long pause followed. "No, Chief." "Have you ever questioned or requested verification of any other species' Black Protocol ratings?" Park's scales paled slightly. "No, Chief." "I see." Chief Hanjun turned to a new screen displaying Park's service record. "Your record shows 17 separate complaints from human travelers over the past 3 years, citing excessive scrutiny and hostile treatment. No other species has filed more than 2 complaints against you in the same period." The chamber was silent as this evidence sank in. Park stood stiffly, saying nothing. Chief Hanjun turned to jury. Judge Kim, the committee has requested your testimony. Are you willing to speak about yesterday's events? Ju-rai rose gracefully. I am, Chief Hanjun. As she moved to the witness position, she could feel all eyes on her. This was a critical moment not just for her, but for all humans in galactic society. Judge Kim, Chief Hanjun began. Please describe your interaction with Officer Park upon your arrival. Ju-ri spoke clearly and calmly, describing the events without embellishment or emotion. She detailed each procedural violation, each inappropriate comment, and each instance where Park had shown clear bias against humans. When she finished, Chief Hanjun asked, do you believe Officer Park's actions were motivated by species prejudice? Ju-rai looked directly at Park before answering. I believe Officer Park has accepted certain assumptions about humans that colored his judgment. Whether this rises to the level of intentional prejudice is for this hearing to determine. And what remedy would you suggest, Judge Kim, if these charges are proven? This was the question everyone had been waiting for. The chamber grew even quieter. If Officer Park is found responsible, Ju-ri said carefully, I would recommend against his dismissal. Murmurs of surprise spread through the audience. Even Park looked shocked. Instead, Ju-ri continued, I would suggest 3 measures. First, that Officer Park undergo comprehensive training in cross-species cultural awareness. Second, that he be temporarily reassigned to work directly with the Earth Embassy's security team, to gain first-hand experience with humans. And third, that he make a formal commitment to treat all species according to the same standards and procedures. She paused, then added, punishment does not change minds, Chief Hanjun. Education and experience do. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, Chief Hanjun nodded slowly. Thank you, Judge Kim. You may return to your seat. The rest of the hearing moved quickly. Several witnesses testified about Park's known attitudes toward humans. Records showed a clear pattern of singling out human travelers for extra scrutiny. Finally, Chief Hanjun called for Officer Park's final statement. Park stood stiffly. I maintain that my actions were based on security concerns, not species bias. However, he hesitated, his scales shifting through several colors. I acknowledge that my judgment may have been affected by preconceptions about humans. He turned slightly toward Ju-ri. The Black Protocol retest results speak for themselves. I was incorrect in my assessment of human capabilities. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a significant admission from a proud Silurian. Chief Hanjun considered for several minutes before delivering his judgment. This hearing finds that Officer Taiwan Park violated multiple provisions of galactic law in his treatment of Judge Kim. His actions show a clear pattern of bias against humans that is unacceptable for any security officer serving in a multicultural environment like Novan Station. Park's scales paled to a light blue as the chief continued. However, in recognition of Officer Park's service record and Judge Kim's wise recommendation, this hearing orders the following. Officer Park will be reassigned for 6 months to serve as a liaison officer to the Earth Embassy. He will complete comprehensive cultural awareness training, and he will issue a formal apology to Judge Kim and the Judiciary Committee. The chief looked directly at Park. Officer Park, do you accept these terms? Park bowed stiffly. I do, Chief. Then this hearing is concluded. As the chamber began to clear, Chairperson Vox approached Ju-ri. An impressive display of judgment, Judge Kim. Many would have sought harsher penalties. Ju-ri smiled slightly. Harsh penalties would have reinforced his belief that humans are vindictive or emotional. This way, we may gain an ally instead of further entrenching an enemy. Indeed, Vox's 4 eyes studied her thoughtfully. Your recommendation demonstrates exactly why humans have earned their place on the committee. You understand that true justice is not about punishment, but about creating harmony and understanding. Later that evening, Ju-ri stood in her quarters, looking out at the stars. Her formal introduction to the committee had proceeded without further incident, and she was now officially Earth's representative to the highest legal authority in the galaxy. A message chimed on her communication device. It was from Ambassador Lee. "The news of today's events has spread throughout the station. You've made humanity proud." As she was about to reply, her door chimed. When she opened it, she was surprised to find Officer Park standing there. His scales were a neutral blue, and he stood less rigidly than before. "Judge Kim," he said formally, "I came to deliver my official apology in person." "That wasn't necessary, Officer Park," she replied. "The written apology would have been sufficient." Park's scales shifted slightly. "Perhaps, but I believed it was appropriate. Your handling of today's hearing was unexpected. Many judges would have demanded my dismissal." "That would have solved nothing," Jury said, "and justice should always seek solutions, not merely punishment." Park was silent for a moment. "I have much to learn about humans, it seems." "And I about Silurians," Jury replied. "Perhaps we can both learn during your assignment to the Earth Embassy." After Park left, Jury returned to the window. In the reflection of the glass, she could see herself in her judge's robes, the stars behind her. One human, standing before the endless possibilities of the galaxy. Today, she had shown the galactic community not just that humans were intelligent enough to join them, but that humanity brought something unique to the stars, a perspective on justice that valued growth over retribution, understanding over punishment. As Earth's representative, she had made her first ruling not with harsh penalties, but with wisdom and foresight. And in doing so, she had begun to change minds, one alien at a time. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they had brought their justice with them.